Welcome, Warriors, to the Warrior Circle. This is your gathering space in Infinite, the first ever science-backed fitness fantasy RPG. I'm Walt, your five-star master wizard, founder, and lead designer with over 15 years of transforming lives through physical combat, mental intellect, nutritional alchemy, and RPG gamification. Here, we share insights, ignite transformations, and unlock the secrets to becoming the ultimate warrior. Ready to level up your body, mind, and spirit? Then join us at infiniterpg.com. That's INFITNITE RPG.com. Now, let's dive into this week's topic, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's do
This
it.
week's topic is on nutrition myths. Now, this is going to be a fun topic, honestly, because I'm a metabolic nutritionist. I've been one for about 6 years now. Claire, you are a nutritionist as well. What's your background?
Yeah, so I have a degree in food science and technology, and then I've got a nutrition certification as well. So it took a lot of nutrition courses, but not a certified nutritionist or registered dietitian. But food has definitely been a big priority for me, both personally and career-wise. And I'm also a big maintenance phase listener, which is an amazing podcast that does a lot of debunking and talking about diet, health, wellness industries, and a lot of the grifts that go along with them. So I like to think I've heard almost all of them at this point, and always look forward to shedding some light on the things that get sold to us that are just profiting off of our insecurities or trying to tell us we're doing something wrong. So this is definitely a big topic for me, and it's important to me that my clients have good relationships with food and that I do as well. So yeah, I'm here for it.
I agree. And I think just to kind of set the tone of honestly the one that I've heard more than any in my entire fitness journey, carbs. Not only just carbs, but the myth that carbs make you fat.
Ugh.
Everybody out here hating on carbs. I know every day we hating on carbs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it really stems, at least from my experience, going back to the wave of the ketogenic diet. Now, if you don't know about the ketogenic diet, it's a primarily fat-focused diet. So you're essentially eliminating processed carbs, complex carbs, slow digesting carbs, you name it, primarily all carbs you're most likely eliminating, so that your body can produce something called ketones as an energy source. So this diet was very, very popular for fat loss back in the 20 teens. So for me, I really wasn't getting into it till 2011, 2012. And there was prominent YouTube figures, books, you name it, coming out during this time. And I experimented with the diet, and I typically do not criticize or prescribe really much of anything unless I try it myself. Um, and I tried the ketogenic diet for 30 days, and I lost a lot of weight because honestly, I didn't know what to eat.
that's yeah, that's a pretty easy way, right? If we're you just can't eat anything. Yeah, that goes against my diet. So I guess I just won't eat. Perfect.
Yep.
Yep.
Great. This will be well-rounded nutrition for sure.
And I was also going to school at the time, and man, the cognitive effects that it had on just my focus, my energy, my I had a frequent brain fog because primarily our brain operates on glucose, so not a lot of glucose going on in my brain. So half the time, I'm like, what's going on? But yeah, so that was kind of like the start of when I started to hear the whole carbs are make you fat. But I want to hear from you guys, like, where was that first time you started to hear that? And also, why do you guys think it's a myth?
Well, I know I have a story with it. I don't mean to cut anybody off, but I actually had a food science friend, which is wild to me to have a food science friend who started using keto to lose weight, and especially crazy because the keto diet was invented in the 1930s to help with epilepsy. So it does still have applications today for people that have specific medical conditions, and having like just a different ratio of macronutrients helps with their specific medical issues. So to have like a scientist buddy who is a professional, legit science woman on this diet where she was like, "Oh, it's great. I'm having the best day. I have this horrible headache. I can tell I'm in ketosis." And it sounded awful. And she was always making these like peanut butter, coconut oil, fat blast ball things. I don't know. I'm sure they were great. Not for me. But that's when keto specifically kind of entered, my vernacular and circle. And ever since then, I mean, they talk about this a lot in maintenance phase, and I'm sure you've all seen it, that this stuff just all cycles. So I'd seen the iteration before in the 90s with Atkins, and it's like, oh, this is the new carbs are bad. We're cycling through to carbs. Soon it'll be fats, and soon it'll be red meat or seed oils or whatever the next thing is. But I just remember, I still think about that sometimes. I'm like, really? Scientist friend? Keto? All right. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's also you can also draw the connection with the carnivore diet as well. Um, again, I'm not saying it's a myth, right? Everyone here loves protein. We know the necessity of protein. But when we're primarily only consuming protein, um, again, for that small 1% population that can benefit from that, whether they have some type of disease or some sort of, I don't know, digestion issue with certain types of proteins or some other sources of carbs or fats. Yeah. But again, that's kind of like another thing on top of the carbs make you fat is like only eating protein. It's like, well, yes and no, you know. So what are you
Yeah.
guys' thoughts on that? Let's chime in.
I first heard about keto probably same time around early 2010s. I tried it myself. There was like a really, really, really popular Reddit subreddit for keto. And there were people, it was like blowing up. There were people posting all their super fatty foods and saying that they dropped like 100 pounds on keto. And mind you, this was a lot of folks that were like 300 plus range that were dropping massive amounts of weight from keto. I was like out of college, just started my office career, had gained, I don't know, an extra 15. It wasn't a freshman 15, but it was like the office sedentary job 15. And I was like, okay, I want to try keto. I think this looks like a good way to possibly drop that extra 15 pounds. This was before I knew anything about nutrition. When I was dabbling in all of the different, trends and fads and stuff things that were going on. And honestly, I felt terrible on it. I also felt really terrible on a vegan diet. When I took out a lot of protein from my diet, my nails really changed. They were so much more brittle. I saw almost immediate changes in my overall physiology from doing these fad diets. And I only did them for a few months at a time. So that was my experience.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, being in the fitness industry for 12 years, 13 years, um, especially in the Navy, like working out and seeing the overweight people in the military and to talk about carbs and everything, and then getting into just the fitness influencers and what they spread, what kind of message they spread and everything. Um, bad carbs, good carbs, etc. Keto. I mean, right now we're seeing the Ozempic fade, right? Or FOD,
Mm.
fade, FOD, whatever it's called. Um, but Joe Rogan was talking about it like, uh, don't think Ozempic's for everybody. I mean, we see that on the label it says cancer after 24 months for throat cancer or whatever it was. But he was saying like if you're immensely obese, yeah, take Ozempic, but then get into those good habits of training, eating right, etc., and then way off of it. Same thing with like keto and all that stuff. It might work for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. I definitely think carbs are great for you. Getting to, I think it was like my heaviest was like 210. I was stuffing my face with carbs, right? Um, and it gave me great energy. I was strong, loved it. Once I started cutting down and took some of those carbs out, I was hating life, you know? So, yeah, the big myth on it, just learning about it through fitness influencers, um, other fitness people and everything. Um, yeah, I just don't think it's great for our fitness society, community, and everything. So I think people should definitely be aware and do more research on the carbs and what good carbs are and what bad carbs are and all that stuff and get it in your brain.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I agree with everything y'all are saying too. Less scientific, but I've had a lot of clients. I've been in the fitness industry as well for quite a while, and you always have people asking about it, this and that. And there's something that really resonated with me has always been just balance. Finding that harmony within your personal life. And for me personally, I tried, going super low carb to cut weight. We've all been there. We've all done that. And again, you get the brain fog. Me personally, I'm not the nicest person when I'm really hungry, so it affects my
Same.
mood
Yep.
heavily.
Yes.
Same. Yep.
Um,
Oh yeah,
and
knows.
I hated having those big swings in what I was having to eat and the extreme nature of those kind of diets. And so I've always figured that, having somewhat of a balance is a lot more important than really focusing or demonizing one macronutrient over the other. And I found that for 95 of my clients, unless it is a medical issue or something to that degree, that typically works better for them. They can fit it into their day a lot easier. They're more willing to stick to it. So the compliance is extremely high. And, and it allows them to still be human. Because I mean, unless you're a competitive athlete or, like I said, uh, have a medical issue, people are gonna vary in their diets. Sometimes you want to have some cookies, you want to go out, you want to have a beer, but for the most part, I think just having that balance and not going too extreme to one degree or the other is at least a really good start. Kind of finding what works for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that balance is so critical. And thinking about all the benefits that we lose when we eliminate major food groups, in any case, like B vitamins, folate, all sorts of things that exist in lots of carbohydrate sources, like not to mention fiber and just the essential energy we need for our brains and bodies to function to perform well. If we have athletic goals, you have to fuel yourself well to just get through your day. And I like to, yeah, speaking about balance, I like taking a 360 approach at remembering how every aspect of your life fits together. And most of our clients and people we work with, and ourselves included, we're not, this can't be our entire lives, even if it's what we do professionally. And so remembering that we have to, fuel, even fuel for our daily lives. Like I don't know, like I try to encourage my clients who have kids. It's like, fuel yourself like you're an athlete too. Like you need carbs to run after those kids. Like just what you're doing in your office, running your errands, doing the things you do. Like take care of yourself so you can do those things and not feel terrible because it's going to be hard being an adult. So I don't know, eat your carbohydrates. They're really important. There's lots of good sources. And Alex, like you're saying, also having them be an enjoyable part of your life. I mean, who wants to just, I know a couple people who just eat for fuel, but that's a pretty small percentage. Food is everything. It encompasses our culture and our history and our senses. And I don't know, it's something that I personally want to at least enjoy most of the time if I can. And carbs are great.
Yeah,
Look
Yeah,
at
Carbs are good.
absolutely.
carbs.
I
Carbs are
agree.
great.
And I think everybody can agree on most clients fall off on their diet if they don't have that balance, right? Like I've been
Absolutely.
eating healthy all the time. I eat my high proteins, fats, and carbs. But then each week I have pizza Fridays and I have
Perfect.
pho Saturdays. Like I get my noodles and I get my pizza. And guess what? Sunday, I'm right back on my diet. So yeah, definitely that balance and enjoying the food, like Alex said and Claire. Yeah.
Love
Sounds
it.
like a good weekend. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That sounds like a
Nice.
great weekend.
Yeah.
Pizza Friday for Saturdays. I
hmm
haven't had fun forever.
Yeah,
Oh my
son.
God.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're in
Um,
Washington. You should have it every weekend.
I know,
It's
I
it
know,
rains out there all the time.
I know. I want to kind of bring up a point that you brought up, Alex, as far as not demonizing it. Like we also don't want to demonize any particular diet approach either in this conversation. I know
Mhm.
we're attacking keto in a negative way, not painting it in a positive way. again, there are actually warriors that have came through Infinite that are on the ketogenic diet currently, that have lost over 100 plus pounds. And believe it or not, it's a great strategy. It's a great tool, and it's a great something that is can be really, really beneficial for certain people, not everyone. And that's kind of like the point that we're trying to make here is that it's not for everyone. However, carbs are for majority of people. I'm talking 98% of the population, in my opinion. Um, so we don't want to demonize anything. Again, it has very specific use cases for success. But what we are really against, and I think I'm kind of just speaking for everyone here, is saying that keto, vegan diet, or any really diet, anything with a D in it, is for everyone. Um, it seems like everyone here has a more balanced and holistic approach to it, primarily because of the key thing Damien brought up, which was compliance. How long can you stick to this nutritional approach is the key question. If it's only for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, it most likely is not going to be a good approach for you for the long term. Unless you have to chase short-term results, like for example, Alex is preparing for his bodybuilding competition, right? So
Yes,
his diet is very unique and it's currently a little broad, but we're honing in. Calories are knocked down, carbohydrates are knocked down. So
yes,
we're
yeah.
honing into, we're going to eventually be taking out specific foods, putting specific foods in, and that's when it's like, okay, this is a great approach for Alex. Now the question is it a sustainable approach? No. He would
No,
go mad.
I would.
Especially getting down to that 3%, 4% body fat.
Ooh,
Oh
gonna be
yeah,
looking cut.
yeah.
And you know what happens? It turns into a binge, right? And that's typically what happens with most people who go on some of these diets, right? They go on these diets to get awesome results, possibly, very, very quickly. But then as they continue to restrict psychologically, things get tougher and more difficult. And then what happens is they go on an all-out binge. They break all the habits, they drop the diet, and then now they're going back to their old ways, their old food habits, and possibly in a worse situation, right? So that's the whole point of bringing up these myths of carbs are bad. They're great for you. The
I'm
myths
sorry,
of
keto. I wasn't trying to come at you, keto. I'm so sorry. My number one rule, I will be very clear, as I'm sure for all of us, is whatever diet works for you individually is the one that I support. Like you said, the one that you can stick to, the one that makes you feel good, that makes you feel energized and allows you to live your life. It's great. I sometimes get a little salty. I don't mean to. Not individually. Just there's worthwhile commentary to be made about things so people consider it and know all the facts going in. But if it works for you, it doesn't have to make sense to me. I do not mind. You do you.
And I would
totally
like
with
to
you.
say too that most diets, no matter which direction you go, are simply a restriction of calories.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's essentially all it is. So whether you're restricting your fat calories or whether you're restricting your carbohydrate calories, that's essentially what most of these diets promote. And so, like again, you can't demonize one or the other. It's all about control and and compliance and all that.
Well, and we know, like talking about this swinging back to like, having like, a day where you really overeat or you eat the kinds of foods you've been trying to avoid, that often is a result of restricting too much or cutting out too many things too quickly because our bodies do kind of naturally want to stay at a certain level of homeostasis for a lot of us. So sometimes that's a response to like a lack in a specific nutrient or thinking that we're being underserved in caloric intake and our bodies wanting to fight to survive. Like it's a very natural impulse. It's not necessarily like, a weakness or like lack of willpower. Like we all know that willpower is one of the things we should not necessarily rely on all the time. We need to set ourselves up for success with systems. And when we go too extreme and we go to a diet that's too far away from what we're used to, there's going to be rebound effects. And then often there are the emotional side effects from that. And so, I mean, carbohydrates are a great example of one that people really try to cut out, and then you feel really awful, and then you really crave carbs, and then you eat a lot more carbs than you plan to, and then you feel like you failed. And actually, it's just the structure and a little bit of extra knowledge that will help you succeed, which is why having conversations like this is so beneficial because it's a good reminder for everybody. Like, it's not you. Like, set yourself up in the right way and in the right time progression as well. Like doing a cut for something is one thing, like that can be kind of quick. But I've heard also that it can be kind of unfun feeling as well. But you're doing it for a specific goal to look super, super cut and lean. But again, that's a lot of knowledge goes into that kind of planning. So for the rest of us, it's like, don't cut things out too quick, unless you have to for some reason. But it's not,
Agreed.
yeah,
Totally.
it's not a
Totally.
failing if things don't work. It's just you need to know what works for you and how to implement it.
Yep.
And that is perfect segue to implementation, right? There are some nutrition implementation myths as well. One example is the main topic, clearly carbs. So there are a lot of individuals who do eat carbs, right? Some of which eat a lot of them, some of them very little. And one thing that I found, at least in my journey, is I often hear that people who are eating low carb are afraid to increase their carbs because they don't feel good when they do so, meaning they feel more groggy. They feel a little bit slower. They feel like when they get that burst of energy, it quickly goes away. So let's talk a little bit about why that occurs, number one. And again, without getting super scientific and super technical, trying to keep this conversation grounded, right? For the listeners who are experienced and who are inexperienced, um, our body is built to adapt, right? It adapts to what we do with our body and what we put inside our body. And if your body is used to running on low carbs and higher fats, and then all of a sudden you introduce a lot of carbs, yes, your body is going to be like, what are you doing? I don't know what to do with all this, so I'm just gonna store it all. And that's why a lot of people who try to increase their carbs don't do it successfully because they do too much at one time. So that's the first implementation issue is adding too much of one macronutrient at one time. And of course, the same thing goes for other macronutrients as well with protein, right? People who jump up from 100 grams of protein to 200 grams of protein typically have a lot of problems because protein is the hardest digesting nutrient in our body. So our digestive system is not used to digesting that much protein. So guess what? You're probably gonna have some gassiness, some bloating,
That lead
common
ball in your
symptoms.
stomach feeling. You just feel heavy.
Yep.
That a
Oh
lot.
my
Yep.
gosh, yes.
Yep. So if you're afraid to bump up your carbs specifically because you have that negative feeling, just know that you have to give your body enough time to adapt. And the best way to do that is by increasing your carbs incrementally, not vastly all at once. And number two, focus on the primary source of your carbs, right? Slow digesting carbs are probably going to be the best thing for you generally. Now, for performance and other things like that, that could be a much deeper conversation. But generally, for those people who are afraid to bump up their carbs or think that it's going to make you fat, or you want to get all these negative effects, just know that it's a slow and progressive process for your body to adapt to any changes that you make to it. And I think that's an important take to mention here.
Yeah. I have a perfect example. One of my buddies I served with in the Navy, he been eating junk food, processed food, seed oils, etc. for the past 12 years. Now he's wanting to change his diet and eat healthy. And I told him, I was like, hey, how about instead of going straight, because he wanted to go to carnivore. I was like, how about instead of going straight to the carnivore, let's look at your grocery list and in a 6 month time frame, let's take out instead of buying this frozen meat or whatever packaged meat, let's go into chicken, steaks, etc. And then if it's these snacks and all this stuff, let's do fruit, nuts, stuff like that. and then switch it out each time you go to the grocery store over the next 6 months. So in 6 months, you have a whole different grocery list, right? But instead, he went straight into the carnivore, bought a whole bunch of steak, red meat, and all this stuff. Um, all this cheese, because it's high fats, high protein, all this cheese and everything. And in 3 days, he was like, "Bro, I fainted in the kitchen." And I'm like, "Bro, you've been eating like crap for 12 years, and then you go straight into this fad diet, and it's like, let's, like you said, implement slowly, incrementally into this diet." But yeah, it's just talking about the slow process and increments, like Walt said. So totally
Yeah,
agree on that.
it's a game of weeks and months and years, not days,
Yeah,
which
marathon, not a sprint, right?
marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, and there's so many people that make that same mistake thanks to social media and everything that they push upon us. But
Yep.
then they decide they like quit afterwards. They're like, you know what? Maybe this just ain't for me. So, which I always find so sad. So I hope that those viewers that have tried things before and failed just know that there is a better path out there for sure.
And professionals that can help you.
Yep.
And we have the web, actual research and looking into everything before jumping straight into it.
And it's really difficult to sort through stuff when you have limited knowledge because everything just seems so convincing out there these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll give
Oh
you
yeah.
like a million reasons to believe it. Like, okay, even if the pictures are fake, the before and afters are fake, but still they'll make it so believable.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Well,
A
gosh.
lot of
and
Yes.
marketing.
always remember, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a I mean, it might even be $1 trillion industry. I can't remember the last number. And then that might be sweeping in health and beauty a little bit, but supplements, nutrition companies, I mean, like diet books and plans and their products. I mean, this is billions of dollars. It's part of something I've heard it referred to as the body shame profit complex. These are big, so things that kind of poke in and say like, oh, you're probably not doing this well enough. You should do it our way. And there's just a lot of pressure and something that's already can be really challenging. Like it's actually not that easy to feed ourselves. I have found as like an adult with a lot of stuff going on, who sometimes struggles with like different energy level fluctuations. Like this is a hard thing to do, and there's a lot of messaging reinforcing that you might not be doing it correctly, and that maybe it's your fault that you feel bad, or maybe it's your fault that you're gaining weight, or maybe it's your fault you're losing weight or not putting on muscle. And it's like it's not a fault thing. It's just a figuring out a plan that's actionable and good for you and your lifestyle and is realistic. But it's easy to get swept up
Yeah.
like with your friend getting swept up going in carnivore overnight or any of the other iterations. And again, they cycle. You will see the same ones for generations. These have been going back hundreds of years. Carbs are bad, fats bad, proteins bad, et cetera, all of these things. And when you start to scratch below the surface on just about any of them, they're pretty thin for the most part. And again, if they're trying to sell you something, and it's not from a reliable source, somebody who actually has scientific backing and somebody that you trust and somebody that you know works well for you and works within your time and your budget and your lifestyle, like put some big questions up. That's all.
Yeah. I'd always
Yeah.
be weary of the people who say that you're doing something wrong and I'm the only one with the answer.
Yes.
You
Liver
know,
Very
can
good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
there
Red
are a lot
flag.
of different ways of handling this and going about this
Oh.
and succeeding in this. So not one person has all of the answers.
Well, and we think about how hard it is to do like a proper, like there aren't really good ways to do studies on people because you can't eliminate all variables and factors. Genetically, we're so different. Like even if you add a supplement to a group of people, it's like, are they all eating identically? You know, do they live in the same part of town and are exposed to the same, environments and stress
Yeah.
levels and all those things? Like, how do we control for these things? How do we know for sure that this is something that is good or bad for you? So I try to be very like kind of agnostic about those things and really like pay attention to stuff that has as good of studies as possible that have been done on people for the most part because rat studies, again, I don't mean to go too down a rabbit hole, but this it like what matters for us and what makes our lives better and makes us healthier is going to have a huge amount of variability and individuality, and that is something that I try really hard to like dial down with people. And yeah, just remind them to not get swept up in things being sold to you all the time. Not think that you're doing something wrong. Just find what works.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and what works is kind of like once you see that something is working, right? Why would you kind of stop it? Like that's the one thing I don't get when it comes to these diets. It's like, okay, cool, you're getting results with keto. Do it for the rest of your life then.
Yeah.
Like what's you oh, you just want to do it for the next 5 pounds? Like
Yeah.
and then you want to eat cupcakes again? I'm confused.
Yeah, then
Like
what?
I think the kind of deeper question is more of like the why behind this decision making around these nutritional decisions,
I
right? It's like, why do you want to follow this approach? Is it because this person looks the way that you want to look? Or is it because you failed at every other diet and you're trying to hope that this one's gonna save you?
I also think it's like the impatientness, right? Like we look at the, I mean, BBLs, right? Um,
BBL Drizzy.
what is it called? Lipo, etc. Like Americans, people in general, I guess, want it so fast and easy. I mean, DoorDash, instead of cooking our food, just get on our phone that we're on 7 to 12 hours a day and just scroll and get the food delivered to us instead of cooking. So we want that fast approach. So if keto makes us drop 5 to 10 pounds in a week, let's do that and then go back to our crappy lifestyle, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the we're fighting against a lot of things that are out of our control, like the food industry, what they put in our foods, things like that, that it seems like we are going down a better direction, hopefully. However, a lot of our nutritional decisions are self-imposed. Um, they are decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis. Therefore, we have control over those decisions, right? Sure, there's circumstances, there's convenience, there's earnings, how much you can earn and how much you can afford. I mean, I wish every single person on the planet could buy organic and go to Whole
Yeah.
Foods and
Yeah.
and grow their own crops in their backyard and, and
Hmm.
get rid of all the pesticides, but that's just again convenience, farmland,
Laziness
money,
also.
laziness,
Yeah.
all these different things. So, to I guess wrap up this conversation, um, what do you guys think is the biggest myth that someone should completely avoid, eliminate, and just completely cut off their list of things to follow about nutrition?
I think just the social influencers, like most of them give out this plan that's generic plan to the whole population. Um, whether it be workout plan, nutrition plan, whatever it is. Um, especially the big influencers. I think doing your research and maybe talking to your local gyms that actually have good nutritionists, good personal trainers that are um, well renowned in their community, and actually sitting down and talking to them instead of going on social media and buying these plans for $50 to $100, whatever the case may be, and then it not working and then you giving up. So actually doing the outsource and um, talking to a reliable source.
Yeah, I agree. I to kind of piggyback off that too. I wouldn't go by based on how people look either. Don't buy a program based upon how somebody looks, the one who's selling it, because it doesn't always have that correlation of validity. You know,
Yeah.
because maybe
Agreed.
they're doing something that you aren't willing to do for that physique and to
Yeah.
maintain it.
Like
Um,
eating the same thing every day for 10 plus
yeah,
years
yeah,
straight.
being essentially robotic with their diet because that's their life. That's their job, that's their income, that's their everything. And for everybody who it isn't their everything, um, I think what Claire said was just find what works best for you personally. It's going to take time and it's going to take some experimentation. Um, but I think ultimately going the slow approach and figuring out what you can implement best in your lifestyle is going to be the best for you in the long run.
Agreed.
Also, I also think if people looked at it in reverse, like how they got to where they are now also took time in the process, right? Of what they
Yes.
ate, the processed foods, the seed oils, et cetera, et cetera. Like that also took a 5 to 10 year time frame of now they're overweight. So if they turn that mindset around, it's like, okay, if I did it in this 5 to 10 years, let me take that 5 to 10 years and do the right process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Time.
I come from kind of a funny perspective on this because I have the food science background. And so I think the biggest thing for me with my clients and people I talk to is that this idea that there's like a tier list and a moralizing of like good and bad foods, that there are things that are categorically going to always be bad for you and things that are categorically always going to be good for you. And that's a lot of the marketing we get is around certain things being toxic or certain additives, definitely causing cancer and all these things. And that's a mire of a lot of misinformation and a lot of marketing. So I also like Alex saying and Damien saying to be patient. I really encourage people to try to kind of shed through all of that noise, all of that like, oh now this coloring is bad and now this preservative is bad. And like for me, from a scientific standpoint, looking at a lot of those things, especially in the proportions that they're used and understanding how they're used in foods, like I don't really ever look at a label that scares me because I've worked with a lot of those ingredients. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're good either. I'm not trying to just like green light everything. But I think we get really blown out of proportion on this kind of clean, pure, perfect eating that never includes fast food and never includes junk foods, junk in air quotes, because I do firmly believe, as I said, if it works for you, then it's a good way to eat, and that can include a lot of flexibility and variability and different macronutrient and micronutrient breakdowns. And it is a process of being patient, of listening, of asking questions. And a lot of that listening is to your own body and to your own needs. Some people can really naturally, intuitively eat. They know when they're hungry, they know when they're full. Some people cannot and need to rely on setting timers. It's like consulting a medical professional, getting a dietitian to give them a breakdown that they follow, tracking, not tracking, all of these things. It's so personal and individual. And again, like Alex said, if somebody is telling you that they have the fix, like look at that skeptically and remember that again so much of this is about trying to sell you on something and trying to tell you that you're doing something wrong. And I tend to believe that actually laziness isn't as big of a component. It might be lack of information and it might be lack of energy and time more so than anything for most people. And I try to just be really really patient and holistic and encouraging that this is something that again we didn't get here overnight. It's not going to change tomorrow. Go slowly and try to enjoy the process and make it work for you. Don't try to copy paste what some influencer is doing. What they are doing is selling you on a life that doesn't exist. That's their job. It's not your life and it's not your job. Find something that works for you and just try not to be so scared. A lot of people come to me scared that they're giving their kids something that's poisoning them and going to give them cancer. And that stress is going to be worse for all of us than anything that we eat. I firmly believe that. You could be having Diet Coke and sugar cookies every day. And if you're not stressed about it, you're gonna be all right. Like this is like a nationwide issue where there's just a lot of tension, a lot of blame, and a lot of stress. And I really want to help remove that as much as possible because there are a lot of ways to do this right. Focus on what you can add, focus on what you're doing right, and make it work for you.
Really,
Oh
really.
yeah.
And I love how you say the lack of time and lack of energy and lack of information and lack of a plan, really. When you're
Yeah.
going through your day, so much is being thrown at you as an adult, so many responsibilities. If you're going through your day without a plan of what you need to be eating, like, of course, it's gonna make your failure rate so much higher. So, yeah, really loved what you had to say, everything.
Likewise.
Same to you. Yes.
Likewise. And to kind of share my big myth that I think people need to kind of really start to reconsider. And again, this could be a whole separate conversation on its own. There's a vast difference between eating for health and eating for performance. There's a massive, massive difference. And again, it really comes down to your personal goals, how your body responds to food, certain foods, and like everything you were saying, Claire, the whole time aspect, the emotional aspect to it. There's a deep psychology behind what we put inside our bodies and what it does for our brain and our body. And we encourage, everyone to do your due diligence and seek support, seek a professional, seek education, and really do your research before you're jumping into trying new things. We encourage taking massive action at Infinite. That's one of our core warrior philosophies is massive action is one of the keys to success, but it has to be intentional, right? And it has to be strategic, right? And it has to be going in the direction that's going to drive growth and progress over time. So we encourage you all to do that. And all that being said, I think that's going to wrap up at least this conversation for this week. So I'm working on this intro, okay? So bear with me here.
Let's hear
Okay,
it.
okay, okay.
You got this.
Okay. So that's it for today, Warriors. I hope you're inspired to transform your body, your mind, and your spirit by embracing fitness as a fantasy RPG. If you're ready to unlock your ultimate warrior potential, experience real world transformation, level up your strength, resilience, mastery, be sure to visit our website at infiniterpg.com. And remember, this is the Warrior Circle, your weekly quest for growth, challenge, and epic adventure. I'm Walt, your wizard guide, by your side on your infinite adventure. As always, conquer the day and join us next week for our next Warrior Circle as we go over a new topic. Check y'all later.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, all.